Well, now I'd like to talk about superannuation. Is a sentence nobody has ever said. But superannuation is important. It's actually the only way to compare pairs.
Compare the pair. Compare the pair. Compare the pair.
I miss those ads. Nowadays, ads only compare meerkats with Russian accents. It's very strange. Superannuation is complicated, but this government ad from 1992 puts it simply.
From July 1, your employer will have to plant money into superannuation on your behalf. Over the years,
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Betty. These contributions will grow.
The Superannuation Guarantee Scheme was introduced in 1992 by the Keating Labor government.
I like that ad because it explains super and shows how even back then the government hated the environment. Why are you cutting out a money tree? We could have had a surplus years ago. Oh, and as a general rule, if someone brings a chainsaw to their final day of work, run Betty, Bob's lost it. But not everyone retires with super. A Senate report earlier this year revealed that 1 in 3 women retire with no super at all. Meatloaf, what do you think of that?
Now don't be sad. Two out of 3, baby.
Don't listen to Meatloaf. He's ruined 1 out of 1 grand finals. The Senate report also showed the superannuation gap between men and women when they retire is 46.6%. The average man retires with about $197,000 in super, whereas women retire with more like $105,000. The last gap to be that horrible to women was the thigh gap. But unlike the thigh gap, the superannuation gap hasn't been created with Photoshop and also won't displace your vagina. But now, before I continue, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Michael, why are you talking about this issue when there is a far more qualified person at the desk? Well, Anthony was very busy researching the census, so it's up to me. According to the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, one cause of the super gap is having children because women are forced to dumb down their careers when they return to work. That means over a few months, a woman can go from the operating room to the delivery room to cleaning a patient's bathroom. Oh, I used to unblock his arteries and now I'm unblocking his toilets and cleaning that glass ceiling. Tomorrow, I'm bringing a chainsaw. You better run, Bob. Betty's lost it now. Now, look, yes, sometimes men dumb down their careers too. Tony Abbott went from being Prime Minister to opening a Just Cuts at Warringah Mall, but as the Minister for Women, he was just finding out what it's like to be a woman. The main cause of the super gap is, of course, the wage gap, which is at a record high of 18.8%. Globally, we have the 11th biggest wage gap of any country. And with the Olympics about to begin, it might be a while before we see Australia ahead of the US again. So let's get used to it. Oh, can you hear that? Yep. That's the sound of men's rights activists writing angry blogs about how the wage gap is a myth and that the new Ghostbusters has ruined their childhoods. Yes, when you adjust for hours worked, education level and experience, the wage gap is lower, but that fails to address the deeper cultural problem that causes women to work less hours, have lower education levels and less experience. And this cultural problem begins in childhood. A pocket money survey of Australian kids showed that girls got $10.60 per week, while boys got $11.80. Jennifer, we're just trying to prepare you for the real world, okay? We love your brother $1.20 more. That's just it. Now, go be a good girl and work on your thigh gap, Jennifer. Oh, Jesus Christ, Jennifer, I was a cardiologist before I had you. Sadly, this cultural problem of women's work being undervalued is reflected in Parliament. Following the election, female representation in the Coalition Party room has fallen to its lowest level since 1993. Now, sure, in many ways, 1993 was better than today. Jean-Claude Van Damme, still making movies. Steven Seagal, still making movies. Mel Gibson, still making movies. Still racist, but still making movies. And back then, if you saw a bunch of people wearing colourful masks, they weren't trying to reclaim Australia. They were just Power Rangers. I mean, it was a simpler time. It was a morphin time. But sadly, some Power Rangers fans. Sadly, we have reverted back to 1993 levels of female representation with only 13 women in the House of Reps compared to 63 men, proving that the sausage fest didn't end on election day. In other words, think about this, only 17% of politicians in the House of Reps are female. That's the same amount of female representation as The Footy Show, a show that parades its one female co-host of the Senate promotional shoots to distract from its obvious misogyny. I mean, what kind of show would do that? It's outrageous. You couldn't get away with it. It just would never happen. Globally, Australia now ranks 54th for representation of women in Parliament. That's so far down the rankings that even Afghanistan has a higher representation of women. Only a few years ago, Afghanistan was under the control of a patriarchal, male-dominated government. But I guess we were too, so if Afghanistan can do it, so can we. Look, getting more women into Parliament is critical. Women make government more representative of the population, they boost the economy, and they're 18.8% cheaper. It's a win-win. So what's being done to balance Parliament? Well, Labor has promised to get more women into Parliament, and with their track record, who wouldn't want to be a female Labor politician? In fact, here is Bill Shorten outlining Labor's plan with no detail at all.
The Labor Party that I'm in, we've proposed that 50% of our MPs will be women by 2025. The truth of the matter is that half of our society is easily half of the ability and merit of this country. So that's why we're doing the leadership stuff.
Leadership stuff! That is the kind of detail we need in our policies. I mean, what does that mean? Will he put forward more female candidates in winnable seats? Will he slip estrogen into Chris Bowen's coffee? Will he follow Tanya Plibersek around with a mirror? Will he force Anthony Albanese to wear a wig and start calling him Annie? Look, sure, all of these ideas are in Labor's 100 positive policies, along with cloning Penny Wong, but still the details are quite sketchy. Meanwhile, Malcolm Turnbull has tried to address the wage gap by bringing legislation that requires government boards to be made up of at least 40% men and at least 40% women. Presumably 20% of government boards can be mashed potato and still comply with the law. These board members are delicious. But other than that, Turnbull hasn't done much except tell people he is a feminist.
I would describe myself as a feminist. I'm a great, as I often say, women hold up half the sky.
And to comply with the law, the other half is held up by a combination of men and mashed potato. The point is, we need to address the cultural causes for the wage gap, and part of the solution is real, thought-out policies to get more women into Parliament, because if we don't do it soon, that super gap is going to get worse, and we might start seeing ads like this.
Compare the pair. Same age, same job, same working hours. Yet there could be a lifetime of difference in their final retirement payout. He is a man. She is not a man. He retires with more super, she retires with less. The comparisons show projected outcomes applying today's average wage gap. Cultural shifts like leadership stuff and more mashed potato on government boards may occur in the future, and this would alter the outcome.